Hi, and welcome to the Best Fleets podcast. In this episode, I'm very pleased to be joined by a longtime Best Fleet to drive for, American Central Transport, or ACT. And they've been in the top 20 for 8 consecutive years, so they're two away from the Hall of Fame. And if you get an overall award, then I think you'd be booted to the Hall of Fame now. So we'll have to see how it goes. I'm joined by Phil Wilt, the President and Chief Operating Officer of ACT, and Marsha Long, who is the President of ML Recruiting. And she is working with ACT, has been working with ACT for 23 years, Marsha.
Yes.
23. That is amazing. So, we'll hear a little bit more in a minute, but first let me tell you that ACT is a dry van truckload service operating primarily in the Midwest and Southeast. I was going to say the Mideast, but that's not a place. And the terminal is located in Kansas City, Missouri. So welcome to the both of you. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to go
Thank
back
you.
to say hello. I'm going to go
Hello.
back to Marsha. And so, you know, can you just tell me how you ended up with ACT and what you're doing now? And I'll
Um,
ask you about Phil in a minute.
okay, sounds good. Well, ACT actually used to be off of Old 210 Highway in Liberty, which is actually where I was raised with my grandparents. So I actually rode the school bus by ACT every day. I grew up there my whole life. When I was 21, I actually started over at ACT as a receptionist. I was there for probably about did the receptionist for about 3 months, and I've been in recruiting ever since then. So I've been bugging Phil for the last 19 years.
Okay, so I just have to tell you, and Phil doesn't know this, but so that not at my company, but when I was a teacher, and when I stopped teaching, I went and became a receptionist for about 3 to 6 months before I got into training, doing stand-up training and then online learning. But I did that receptionist thing, and it's there's it's a humbling job. It is a tough job, and it was nice to get out of it. I don't know if you feel that way, but I have a full respect for anybody who is in that seat.
Me
Absolutely.
too. Me too. It's funny that you were a teacher. That's actually what I wanted to be. Like when I was a little girl growing up, that's honestly what I wanted to be. I just always loved people and I love to talk. So,
It's a good job for loving people and loving to talk, but the problem is children and lots of children and managing that. And actually, I'm going to move over to Phil because weren't you in education as well?
yeah, I went to college and got an economics and an education degree, and then I student taught and realized I did not want to teach.
I did it for 2 years and then I was like, nope.
Yeah, I mean I love kids, but I really don't like. I think I really like more elementary. But once I just remember my kids when they got into middle school and high school, there was periods I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's just not your sweet spot, and it gets so much better. But yeah, I just decided I want to be a teacher, and so I went the business route and worked for. This is my third company in my entire career, so yeah, it was. I'm really glad though I had the teaching degree because the reality is I use it a lot. In lots of different things. I mean, I'm talking to drivers every day. I used to do a lot of training for a company. I think, I present a lot for a lot of different things, including with our drivers and our office folks. And so all that I think has really paid off in that part of it. I love my teaching background. It just wasn't, I didn't want to be in a classroom with kids, I guess. So,
It is a different thing. It's a completely,
yeah.
and teaching itself, the act of teaching is, it's different when you're dealing with adults and when you're dealing with children. And then online, that's a whole
Yeah.
different thing.
Well, I have a whole appreciation for teachers. Kudos to them. They are so important to what we do, and for our kids and our future. But yeah, some people are just really gifted and talented at it that I decided that was not my jam. So, I
You have to
went
go
the
and
business route.
you have to go and do what your jam is. And you are, I think what ACT, I mean, ACT, I know you took a couple of years to get onto the best fleets, but you are like solidly on the best fleets. And I think unless you completely change tack, you're doing the right things where you're creating programs that work for drivers. You're kind of tooling those programs over the years to make sure that they're still working for drivers. And that's what I wanted to talk about. The first one that I wanted to talk about, because you have a number of them, and this is why you're a best fleet, is the traction program, which is an example of one of those programs that has kind of shifted because traction, when you first started it, was for um, new entrants, but now you're kind of moving it away from that. So do you want to do you want to talk about that, Marsha, or shall I move it to Phil?
I can talk about it. So
Okay.
yeah, we first started with a traction program. We were going into the schools, and a lot of guys and gals were getting into it, and they just was realizing it's just tough. It is a tough gig. Like you got to be away from your family, and it's different for them. I honestly think we did great, but then we have decided to kind of shift that toward a little more of experience, guys and gals that have been doing it, the ones that are used to being out on the road, living on, like, you know what I mean, living in their truck. And so now we do require them to have 6 months experience. So they have that little bit of experience under their belt versus just right out of a new school. Do
And
you
so,
have something to
oh,
add, Phil? Sorry.
Yeah,
no,
well,
no, go ahead.
no, yeah, I mean, I think the shift was really important. What we see so often and we hear from drivers coming in is culture and all that's so important for how they're treated. So we want that first experience, or I guess we'd be the second experience of someone coming to drive for a company. We want it to be really good so that they stay in our industry. And so what we've done is kind of focus again at that 6+ months experience. So they've probably been with one carrier, maybe that hasn't always gone great. And so what we want to do is take that, build upon that, use our trainers, use our different programs we have, and what we hope is set them up for a successful career as an over-the-road truck driver.
So that kind of, I think that that's something interesting, and I've been seeing that move in best fleets from entry level programs to kind of changing those entry level programs up out a little bit because now there's the entry level, like the schools have to follow the ELDT model in their training schools, so it's giving them a little bit more, but also because I think people were or companies were putting in entry level programs because of the shortage, and I think that shortage is getting mitigated. I don't know if you see that or not.
Yeah,
Do you find that the shortage isn't quite as
yeah, I think it's not as great as it was. When you watch a lot of the numbers through the trade associations for our industry, it would show that, I mean, you still hear the word we're in a shortage. What I would say is there's a shortage of quality or really, highly professional drivers. And so, Marcia can attest to this because we talk
Yeah.
to a lot of people that just don't always hit our standards. And so there's a lot of folks out there. And so what we're about is trying to find that cream, that extra cut. But I do think people kind of cut out for lots of reasons. I mean, the economy has slowed down. Um, the lifestyle can be hard. And so, you certainly have to work for a carrier that takes into account work-life balance, takes into account quality of life, pay for that, and provides freight that gets you there. So a lot depends on where you live and who you work for and how that gets you through home and things like that. So I think all those things together, Jane, have kind of created kind of the storm that we're in. I would agree, though. I don't think we're in this massive shortage, but we are in a shortage of quality drivers, and I've seen a lot of folks that have driven for us that have retired, that have hung it up because maybe of regulations or maybe they're medical, those types of things. And so I've seen, there's like a changing of the guards where we've gotten a little younger, but also maybe those folks are a little more transient as well. So, not as, or maybe I go in to drive a truck for a while, and then I'm going to go in construction, and then I come back. And so, it's very dynamic is what I would say, but I don't know that there's this massive shortage of drivers. I mean, if you look at freight level right now, there's less freight than there is drivers available. That will turn, that will change, and then we'll be back out there. So yeah, it's ever changing. Every week is different, and the people that we talk to, and it's just constantly moving target.
I think that's actually, and we don't often talk about it from the recruiting and hiring position, although that's important because how you hire is really, really important as to how you retain people and how you move, how you provide professional growth to people. It starts with how you hire them and what you're looking for and making sure there's a match. But do you think that that change in how drivers are not staying, like they're moving in and out of the industry right now because of the economy. But do you think that's something that is actually going to keep going? Do you think that companies have to be more nimble, not limber, nimble as to how you deal with what drivers want to do?
I think so. I mean, I think we'll see probably how pay happens over the next 5 years will probably change drastically compared to what it is today, which is a typical by the mile, which is what we are. But you're seeing such a need for I don't want to do what drivers used to do. In other words, I want to be home much more frequently. I want this, I want that. And so we're seeing a little bit different. And I think COVID started that, and people started to say, wow, it can be different. And companies flexed a lot, and freight was so plentiful. And so now we're kind of now we're post-COVID, and we overbuilt for our industry. And so there's just lots of things going on. But I think if pay is there, people will do sometimes hard things, at least for a while. But right now, good high quality drivers are still in demand. Pay in some places is still going up slightly. And so you do have to be nimble. And what we try to do is look at programs of like what supplements and supports our drivers and helps them have the best quality of life that they can have. I think that's kind of a big deal where you're not a name, you're a name, not a number, where you're
Yeah.
truly a person, where, I mean, to me, the absolute best thing that ever happens, and Marsha and I talk about this, is that when a driver will say, man, I wish I'd come to here years ago. Oh, that's the best thing in the world. I mean, it's sad that they didn't, or that they weren't treated like they should have been, because we're
Hmm.
really big about that. But I love it when it's a win, when you say, wow, this person has bettered themselves, and they're treated better as they should be, for that. But yeah, I think our industry is changing. It's changing rapidly, and it's going to change a lot more in the next 2, 5, 10 years. It's going to be interesting to see what it looks like in that period of time, just because I feel like it's changing so rapidly, right in front of our eyes,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So one of the things, and I meant to mention this before, but how long you've been with ACT, and both of you have been with ACT for a really long time. I'm going to start with Marsha because you've actually been there longer. You're like, it's what working with, so working for and then working with, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And
Yep.
how many years?
Altogether 23,
So you started
January.
when you were two?
Right. I
Yeah.
was 21.
Now people are going to do math. But do you,
Yeah.
so, and I know that Phil started after. So do you have any fond recollections of when Phil started?
Say Phil is very quiet. That's what I remember about Phil. He definitely put on a good show because he is not quiet whatsoever. He's very loud and outgoing, but that's good. That's a real good thing. So
And what
yeah,
did
I would
you
say he's quiet.
how did you start, Phil? What was your first job at ACT?
Yeah, so I've been here 19 years. My first job, I was the VP of HR. So I came in and was working with HR, and recruiting actually reported up to me. is kind of how I started. And so, it was crazy because I had come from like manufacturing. I had been in like a sales rep and product manager, and then I got into HR. And so then I came over to ACT to do that. And I'd worked with our transportation. I'd worked for a large regional cooperative system, and I had been doing a lot of HR work and training and development and that type of stuff. And so when I came over, I loved it. So I got to start working with people like Marsha, and I've known Marsha forever. I was thinking we were the same age, but I guess not.
Well, only 26 then. No.
Okay, that's not true. That's a false truth there. But yeah, and then at some point in time, I became the COO. Operations started to report to me, and safety. Safety came in next, and then operations, and then our past president had ALS. And it was a tough deal. It was a family member, but I stepped in. I was asked to step in the role as president several years ago. And so, yeah, I don't ever think of myself as been quiet. But because I love life, I love what I do, I love our organization, I love drivers. I mean, I think we get to work with the most. I've worked in manufacturing quite a while, but then when I came over to true trucking, like we get to work with the most real people in the world. And I love that. Like, they're just like all the rest of us, and so but I like that because we get to meet some really neat people. So
Well, in that, so let's talk a little bit about, you know, the other programs that you do. So um, you have is it still called Traction, or do you have another name for it, or it's just kind of different now?
So we actually have two. We have Traction, which is for our limited experience, the 6 month, but then we also even have our Reactivate. Reactivate is for our military drivers, and then also maybe some, drivers that maybe been out of it for a little bit. They just need like a little bit of a push to get back in, just a couple weeks worth of trainer, and then gets them right back into that trucking field, which they have probably missed and loved.
So when you are, I know that you have, and you guys are also participate in Race Across America and have a specific military program. Do you find that does that what would you tell other fleets about how to get started in that? Because I also talk to through the best fleets, I talk to companies that say, well, there isn't anything in our area, so we can't do anything.
Do you want to take that one, Phil? You might know a little bit more on
sure. I
that.
mean, what I would say is, man, embrace those folks. They've served our country. Especially if they've been in transportation, which is the ones that we focused on. Yeah, it's going to look a little different, and that's why we ask them to go out with our trainers for a bit because a lot of, especially around technology or the technology in the trucks and the industry technology required is different than being if you were in the Army, for instance, and driving a truck, but they are so worth it. And they're disciplined and they're professionals and they know how to work hard. And they're really good with processes. So all of those are massive wins with it. And so what we try to do whenever possible is get those folks in because first of all we have an extra we pay like we have a holiday that we pay all of our drivers for. I think our fleet right now is at 33%
Oh, nice.
military. And so, we watch that, we celebrate them. We think that's really important. And think other carriers should do the same thing because, if you're looking at, we get at the problem we talked about earlier where there's not always the high quality drive, the most professional quality. This subset is really good. And, sometimes we used to go to some bases and actually do recruiting and the only
Mhm.
thing we found out sometimes is it depends upon the individual. I used to think, oh gosh, if you were in the military, maybe you really like solitude. What we find out sometimes is when they come home, they've been deployed. That isn't always the case. They want to be in, they want to be around people. Now, that depends on your personality and what you're like, but sometimes they've had enough solitude and they want to be, back. And I get that if you've been deployed or something, but
You don't want to go out and be in a truck by yourself for a couple months.
yeah, that
Yeah.
yeah, it just doesn't work. But it's just like all things. I mean, some people that really works for, and others it doesn't. But man, military is a great avenue for recruitment, and it's a great avenue to pour back into people that have already given so much.
How
So.
do you like, do you work with any company to facilitate it? Or are you
Uh,
just kind of, you know, trying to find people
we
other
I
way?
can't
Terrible question.
I can't remember the program, Marsha.
I
But
know.
we
So
I'm going brain down you, Jane. But there's an agency that we work with for the federal government. We're on their registry,
Okay.
and so there's things that we fill out, and there's funds that are available to help even with training and things like that. What I would say to everyone is that program changes constantly, kind of based off the funds that are available either at state or federal level. In the U.S., there's a lot of things changing with some of the programming stuff, but they have outsourcing available, and so then that funnels through these programs, and so they'll look, they will promote your organization, let people know that you hire truck drivers and so forth with that. So once you're in their system, it naturally just happens
Oh, nice.
for that.
So the hard work is just trying to find out who to ask, but you can go to probably go to your state association
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
and
then
then
there's
go
there
from
is paperwork afterwards, but that but that's just part of the process.
Yeah, the paperwork, I think that's part of, Best Fleets is there is paperwork. There's stuff to fill out. And if you can kind of, bring that in, make that part of the process, just, embrace it.
Yeah.
It's going to give you something at the end of the day. So embrace the paperwork. And so I'm going to kind of go back to something completely different because one of the things that best fleets are, I think if you are looking at all of the best fleet companies and what they have in common, it's communication. And one of the things that someone asked me a couple of days ago actually was, what is the one thing that drivers want from, like, in your experience, like if you could like have one thing? And my response, and you might have something different, but it's to be listened to, which is, if you are listened to, then it opens up a whole lot of other stuff. And one of the ways that I think all of the best fleets that are on the top 20 in the Hall of Fame do a really good job of figuring out how to listen to drivers and how to get input from drivers. And ACT has a couple of really cool programs, and one is the fact time calls. So, do you want to give me a little bit about what fact time is? And to me, it seems like it's kind of a no-brainer and not that difficult to do.
Yeah. Hey, Marcia, take that one.
I can definitely take that one. So whenever COVID took place and it was 2020 and we could not see their faces, we missed them. And so we came up with this program of fact time. And if you notice, ACT is even in it for the fact part of
Of
it.
course it
But
is.
I know.
Some
And so
branding.
but we missed seeing their faces. Like we weren't able to go into the office to see them. And so we wanted them to see us and we wanted to see them. And so we developed Fact Time so that way all of us could get on a call together and communicate. Phil was on there. He every single week or every single month gets on there and kind of tells us everything that's going on within the company. But it's just great because it's a good tool for all of us to get to hear and for them to also give us their input of how they're feeling and maybe questions they might have.
Which is awesome because it gives, the ability to have that two-way communication. Before that, how did you do it? Did you have was it in-person meetings that you replaced with the calls?
We didn't, because the fact that we had just drivers everywhere, so it was really kind of hard to do that from like a central terminal standpoint. So we would do a lot of things like, I mean, we still do this where we record a message every week, and put that out there. We have an advisory council. We informally talk to drivers all the time. We do newsletters and all those types of stuff, but our communication wasn't near as good as it is now. And the best thing about Fact Time is that it's private. I mean, you have to have the code to get in to be it. So you have to be an active driver, but it's very transparent. Like we are talking about the industry and freight levels and our customers and new programs. And then we open it up for questions and comments, and there's chat going on during this. So it's very free forming as we go. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I wonder how tonight's going to go because this has been going on. But I always go. Usually we don't start until 7 o'clock in the evening, and usually by then, you're just kind of exhausted. But every time I get off, I'm energized by it, and it's just fun. I mean, I had Marsha. I threw her under the bus one day and had her yodel. We've sing Happy Birthday, which is loud and proud and way off because all the drivers will unmute their phones and we've said happy birthday to people. We give away gift cards for participating. And this month, last week was our 66th edition of that. So we have not stopped. We've kept it going. And it's been really good. And it is recorded. So if for those that can't join us, we put it out on our Transflow app within a few days. And so we always encourage everyone to listen to it. But it's more fun if it's live, just because there's always some joking and try to keep it lighthearted, but yet like worth their time. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you gonna, well, actually, yodel?
yeah, she can
Yes.
yodel.
Okay.
My
She
boys
probably
and
would
I
yodel for
yodel.
you now if you want her to.
I don't know, but can you do it?
I mean,
It'd be
if
a
you want
great
me
clip for
to.
social media.
Oh my God.
Do you want to like turn off your camera and do it?
I mean, maybe if you guys do it with me.
Oh, I
See, that's what she
haven't
tries to
even.
do. She tries to pull you in. That's just what she does.
I would probably do it live, but like if I was on stage with you, I would probably do it. I don't know if I can do it on, it's totally different when it's a camera. That's crazy. Okay, I will just leave that, and if you're inspired, then just start.
I mean, I guess if you want me to do it, I'm pretty much, you know what? If it makes someone smile, I'll do whatever. Ask Phil.
Okay,
I think what she's saying is she'd like to take on the challenge and yodel.
go go
Okay,
for it.
but
You
no,
want us to
no
look
judging.
away while you're doing
Yeah,
it?
everybody look away. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Yo lady, yo lady. That's
That's,
it.
Wow.
but you
That's
can do
really
that louder, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe if the camera was off, the drivers will yodel with me or they'll sing. Ask Phil. Yes, they will yodel with me.
they
And they
will.
sing and they do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Is this
Marsha
for
has
you
this
during
amazing
practice?
ability. Sorry, Marsha has this amazing ability to get drivers to do things like take pictures or do whatever. She's very good at getting them to get outside their comfort zone. So,
Nice. So is this in real life or only on the calls
oh
that you
no,
get
it's all
to
the
do
time.
stuff?
All the time.
Alrighty then. That's okay. So when we do your interview, then I'm feeling like that pictures should be coming as well. I'm
I
going
can.
to I'm going to dig deep into this later. Um, so one of the things that you do with the fact that as well as including yodeling, is you bring in drivers that have something to share, which I think is really good because it's not just, here we are in the office, we're talking to you. You have the drivers actually taking some of the time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian's been doing some things. He's our VP of operations that really kind of runs it, and then the rest of us come in for cameo, presentations or talks, whatever. But there's a group of us that are always on it and always available and set through the entire, like we're there the whole thing. But he's done a really cool thing, and that's where he'll talk to a driver before something that they're doing really well or something that they want to, just share with the rest of it, and then do like, just two or three questions about it, kind of with that. And that has spurred some other stuff too, which is, we've had drivers say, "Hey, I'd like to do this, do that." I'm thinking about one of our drivers right now that is really big into fixing trailers and that kind of stuff. And so
Oh,
we're, trying to figure out how to take those types of things and share them to the fleet so that it's helpful for everyone. And you got to love it when a driver takes on that type of ownership that says, hey, this will help the next driver, this would help our customers, that type of stuff as well. So all of those things kind of free form um, from those calls.
Do you find that, because I kind of find this just within my own team, that once somebody does it and starts like really putting themselves out there, that kind of just starts the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
then
think I think it kind of goes to what you said earlier, which is we all have this huge need to be heard and valued. And so, and I think particularly for the subset of drivers, if you're if you're in a truck alone a lot, you're really just have this need to be heard and valued and appreciated. And so if you see something that you can contribute or something that you can help someone else, man, what a win. And so it really helps people just feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They feel valued, they feel honored. That's a big thing. Everyone, it's a basic human need. We all need that. And so it's important, particularly for drivers that are, in a lot of solitude to have that.
no, I agree. I totally, and it's not just, everybody feeds drivers. I hear a lot about food. And when we're doing Best Fleets interviews, it's like, oh, we have barbecues and we have this and we have that. But there's, what you're doing, I'm sure you feed them as well. But what you're doing is you're kind of providing something more than that because it's kind of in the hierarchy of needs. You're moving to a higher level. It's not just, we'll feed you, but no, we're going to honor you as well. We're going to make you feel like you're getting towards more self-actualization. And I know I'm saying this because I know you know this because of your education background. That little pyramid that you get told about in your first year. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You need to be able to have food and water before you can do anything else. So, um, so so you do like which of those communication things that you do, like you have the newsletter and you have the fact time calls and you have, which the driver advisory board, which one of those do you find the most useful, or do you think that you have to have a number of different things that all go together, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. I think you have to have multiple forms of communication coming at folks today because I think we're all so busy and probably with technology particularly, you're kind of like overwhelmed with sensory stuff. And so I think it's really important that we have multiple ways to do that. Um, by far, my favorite is fact time. But we also like do a lot of special recordings, like if we're gonna blitz something or something new is happening, we'll record a special message. Brian or myself will typically do those that will go out to the fleet and we'll send out a message, say, hey, dial into this extension when you have time. There's special things we want you to know. Then let us know if you have questions. And it could be anything from like open enrollment with benefits to maybe we're changing our event recorder or new technology or new customer. Or we've done all kinds of things. We've even done special things when we've had someone pass away. I mean, we've done things that where everyone knows a person, and so it's kind of one of those things when we think the family needs to know, we'll stop and kind of do that and kind of put that out there with that. Kind of with it. So I think all that's important. And then we also do some communication too with our life coach and our
Yes.
corporate chaplain. So we try to have them at events too. And so like for instance, Driver Appreciation Week. This year, we'll have both of them featured. We'll have them here all week for access to drivers, just so that they can, see them in person. We have so many come through our facilities during that week, and so it's just a great time to touch base with them and all of our support teams.
Well, actually, I'd like to go back because go back to what you said about the coach and the chaplain because the coach has been a really big
Mhm.
um, has been a big deal in the company. Like this has been a big program, and you've had a chaplain for a while as well. But this coach role is not a driving coach. This is a completely different type of coach. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, we actually have coaches in our safety department that are really more around driving.
Right.
But this is a truly a life coach. So we had discovered a number of years ago that we would see drivers struggling with things that kind of maybe went beyond like Marsha or myself, like our expertise. And so we really wanted someone that could come in. And so it really is a coach. It's not a counselor, type of thing. But we're noticing a variety of things like health. Like we were noticing that drivers were struggling. Like, the stats show that a driver's lifespan is shorter than others.
Yep.
That is not okay. That there can be low quality of life, or they could lose their credentials because of their health. So all of those things were a burden to us. Then there was the finance side. You make really good money, but maybe you don't have a lot of money to show for it. Again, devastating to an organization like this. We've certainly seen the mental front come on, particularly COVID, post-COVID.
Mhm.
Anxiety, depression are huge. And if
Yep.
you're isolated, that can be even more, don't have a support system. And then spiritual, I mean, we don't push it, but yet what we find out is there's sometimes loss, despair, searching for more. And so we wanted to have an avenue for all of those types of things. And it really went at our core value of family. We always say you don't get to choose your blood family, but you do get to choose your work family. And so what we have, and we all have to be good family members, like, to keep our jobs, right? I mean, that's part of being a good family, member kind of with it. But what we felt like we needed to do was like step it up and find ways to help out with health challenges financially. You don't know what to do, mental, and then even spiritual. And so what we've tried to do is put together resources, and that's really what Neil is really good at because he talks to drivers. We talk to all of our newbies weekly. And then we talk to all of our existing drivers once they're at 6 months and beyond. We talk to them once a month. He literally does an outbound call to every one of them, and then does a lot of texting as well. And it's a check-in, but he's like the resource guy. Like, if someone we developed, like for instance, a class on that he helped us with called Money Wise, and it's kind of like the basic principles of debt snowball and saving money and preparing for a rainy day, but thinking about purchases and what do you need and what do you not need and what can you afford, putting that into a spreadsheet that shows you, hey, if I'm making this many miles, here's what I generate. Just very practical trucking industry. I make this, now I'm spending this, and then
Yeah.
works with that. And we do those live. I mean, those are on Zoom calls. But what we want is the driver and their family, their spouse to be on the call.
Oh, nice.
And then Neil will work with them on the side to like for spreadsheets and like, hey, put in your finances in this spreadsheet, and we provide those tools and let them start to, because some people have had no exposure to that kind of stuff. He talks a lot with folks that are lonely, that are struggling with mental and anxiety and depression, and that a lot of times is then taking into our benefits program and referring and saying, hey, I really think you could benefit from this. We do also pride ourselves on confidentiality unless we're concerned about someone hurting themselves, and
Right.
and so Neil really, um, we know the types of things that we're talking through, and we see our numbers and they're very good, but we don't want specifics because we really want to provide a safe place for them to go, for that. And then he's done a ton of videos around health, like working out on the truck, working out in our fitness facility when you're here in the building. He's worked with some dietitians. He will coach on um, how to pack a cooler, how to eat on the road, those types of things. And then we have a corporate chaplain, as you said. Rocky's been with us for quite a while, and we've had one other chaplain before him, and so we love that because he just meets people where they're at. He doesn't push religion. If they want to have a religious discussion, he'll have that. But he is just another like really good
Person.
listener, and so what we want to do is provide access. Whether or not you use the program, we can't dictate that, but we really hope people do, um, and kind of go from there. So it gets at that value. If you really say you value people and you want them to be listened and heard, this was a true actionable thing that we developed and launched. And initially we had a couple misses, but what we found is an individual that has a CDL. He didn't drive forever, but he understands it and then can relate.
Yeah.
And so we've really been happy with what he does and his approach to honoring people.
Yeah, I kind of like that because it's someone who's not tied to the job, really. You
Yeah.
have someone who's tied to a driver's life, not the driver's job. It doesn't, it's not about, performance at all. So you can have a non-performance related conversation, which I think is really, really important. And more fleets should do it. I think if anybody sees this is something that, I mean, you can copy the idea, but it's all in the execution, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I hope people do it. It's all about finding the right person, is what we discovered, that can relate to a driver. I don't know that, I think a couple of the first people we hired, they wanted to fix them. And
oh,
that doesn't really work. I think it's you gotta listen first. You gotta seek to understand, Stephen Covey used to say,
yep.
and then once they trust you, then you have the ability to speak in, if given permission, to their lives, or to find resources that will help them out. But, you can't just, oh my gosh, you can't just start saying, well, here's what you need to do. No, I mean, no one wants to hear
No
that.
one wants that.
Yeah. And so, that's why, it's just your approach is so important, but you have to be trustworthy. But yeah, man, I hope every fleet out there does that, because I mean, we need to be providing more resources to support drivers who have one of the hardest. I mean, it's such an isolating job. Um, and the world is tough these days.
It is harder. It's definitely harder. Do you
Yes.
find, Marsha, do you find that that is helpful on, those type of resources? Are they helpful before drivers are hired, or is it not until they're actually at ACT and realize the kind of support that they get?
I mean, we do tell them about it whenever we're in the recruiting part of it. But I think with my team, like we don't just recruit to recruit. When we're recruiting, we recruit with our heart and our souls. And so we like to match with what they're looking for. We're going to be able to match with ACT. And me knowing ACT for so long, it's piece of cake. It's easy for me. It's I don't know. I know the company. I know who we are with the whole entire package. So is it helpful? Yes. But I also think ACT in a whole, it's the whole package already.
Yeah, your best fleet. There's a reason that you're a best fleet. I wanted to kind of talk about kind of end up with the process, like the process that we go through every year, just about how you prep for it and the kinds of things that you would give people as well, because this is going to be Marsha's first year doing this. So, um, you know, like you've been nominated. Now what? Now what do you do?
Yeah. Um, well, we've been in the process for a while. So once, but let me back up. I'll answer your question and I'll tell you kind of what we've now done since we've been doing it for a while.
You mean
We,
you've been doing it for a while this year already?
oh no, no, I mean just the best
Oh,
fleets
okay.
like
The
process,
cycle.
kind of with that. Yeah. And, so once that happens, we will kind of take the questionnaire. We'll divide that amongst the group or the disciplines that kind of have that. I now keep kind of a running track record of every new program that we bring in within the new year. So when we make tweaks, just like for instance, for several years we were training students. Now we've shifted based off the economy, based off our results, based off of kind of really what the organization needed, but we still have a training emphasis. So, we try to capture all those in a spreadsheet, and then as we go through the questionnaire, which is extensive, but it's very thorough, then it helps us kind of go in. She's laughing. Because it is
I
very
know, I
it's
know.
very extensive. But what it allows you to do is to tell your story and to give a lot of detail around that. And so I appreciate that part of it. So, you'll go through and fill that out. And that takes quite a bit of time because, you'll write it and then maybe you'll come back and then relook at it, or you'll think, gosh, I forgot to put that in there. That type of stuff. So it takes a bit to get that together. And then once that's done, you'll go through and there's an actual interview that you go through with someone like Jane or someone from their organization. Those have always been really good. I love those. And we bring our team together and we kind of all on a call just like this. And it allows us to go through and whoever's going through our application with Carrier's Edge to look at it. We can expand on, questions, answers with what we're doing with different programs. And then it opens up to our drivers. And so drivers get to do a survey. There's so many that you need to do, percentage based off of your fleet count. And that's cool because then drivers get to confirm, what you're about. I always really like afterwards to see the comments that come in from drivers because we're not part of it. And then you get to see what they say about the organization, kind of with that. So that's kind of the overall process. And then they announce. We have really, since we've been in the process, and I really like the the meeting that you all do that celebrates the best fleets. But there's a lot of really good information that comes from that. And so I always look at it and go, gosh, we work really hard at earning the right to keep our drivers and to be a best fleet. But you don't have all the ideas. And so I love going to that because it allows you to get some really good stuff. Like you kind of go, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Or that wouldn't work for us, but we could do this. And so a lot of really good ideas come from that. And then we'll bring those back and we'll talk with key members of our management. And then we'll a lot of times put those in think tank and we'll kind of figure out like, how could we do that? What would that look like? And then, work on trying to become better. We always try to come up with 2 to 3 things that are going to be different. The economy's been tough. We've been in a trucking recession for 3.5 years. The first couple
Yep.
years really didn't affect us, but the last year has been tougher. And so I have a feeling we'll see a lot of folks probably be status quo, just because the freight market has been so challenging. But so I think it'll be interesting to see what we see this year. But there is no one who does this better in helping capture what it looks like to have environments that are really good for drivers than Best Fleet to Drive for. And so that's why we've been so honored to be part of the program is because, we learn it the first several years, it was like, how do we do this? But what I found is it's just made us better and better and better. And it's sort of a pride thing once you're in the circle to go, man, we got to continue to have an environment that earns the right to retain our drivers. And drivers have lots of choices. So why wouldn't you have and create a place to work that honors and breaks the mold of what others or how they've been treated for years and years? So the program has really helped us be better. The process is pretty simple. It takes time and a focused effort. But my goodness, I don't think it's the first year. I think the first year is good when you do it because it helps you, and it's hard to get in that circle, especially the first year because you're just learning how to the process. But my
What these
goodness,
questions mean? What are you asking
yeah. Oh
me?
my gosh. I've thought that multiple times. Jane, what are you doing here? But the
Sometimes
reality,
I have to say, sorry to interrupt, but I have to say, sometimes the questions are not 100% great.
yeah,
Like we change the questions. That's why we change questions so much is because we ask a question and we don't know what to ask because
yeah.
we're asking questions that nobody in the industry is asking. And so we ask this question and we get the results and go, oh boy, that was not a good question. So let's change that and get some better information that we can. So your struggles with some of the questions, yeah. It's tough to answer. It's tough to come up with questions about things that are changing in the
Yeah.
world, you know? So thank you. Kudos for you we're just going to answer these questions as best we can.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be transparent, honest about what you're doing, and what every carrier does is the same thing. We're all hauling freight, but we all do it differently and
Exactly.
different modes of that, and different parts of the country and different challenges. So everyone has to find their solution to how do you have an environment that drivers that keeps them and makes a place that has really a good work environment. We're based in Kansas City. We're in the middle of the country, and so but we have drivers kind of from here to the East Coast is where we go and down to Texas. And so, I mean, that is different than what it would be for someone who's in the upper tier or down in Florida or, out east. So it just all, or west. I mean, it all looks different based off what you're doing. And every company kind of becomes themselves, are and what your values are and what you're about. So that's what's exciting about this, is that you get to see a taste of what others are doing, and you kind of go, gosh, we couldn't do that, but that's cool. Or how's that work? Or wow, that would be such a cool thing to add into our programming that we offer and with our services. So we've learned a lot.
That's one of the things that people will say about us is that, oh, we can't do these things. We can't do the entire, I don't know, menu of things for your drivers, but that's not what you do. Like, I think one of the things that really works for you, like for your company and for other members of the top 20, is that if you're not on the top 20, that doesn't mean you didn't get value out of the program, because you can, just by talking about your company out loud in a group with interviewers, you learn something about your company just by answering a question. It doesn't matter what question you're just talking, and you're like, as you're talking, you're listening to or thinking, I don't have a good answer. Okay, what should my answer be? What would I want my answer to be? So I want to encourage, that's why I encourage people to not worry about winning, not worrying about being a best fleet, because it's that process of improvement and figuring out the answers to the questions and adding just a couple of things. And I think one of the tricks with the best fleets is that you don't add tons of things. Like you said, you're going to look at it and think about two or three things that you're going to add next year. And that will just improve it that much. So I appreciate you saying that, because that is the idea behind it, is that we give fleets a tool so that they can just, make improvements, talk to their drivers, get information from their drivers that you wouldn't normally get, because our driver survey is very different than the stuff that you do. I know you guys do surveys as well, like everybody on the planet does surveys now, but it's like the surveys you get through Best Fleets are a little bit different. So and thank you also for mentioning the conference, which is March 16th and 17th, is going to be the Best Fleets conference and awards um, event, and where we will, the best fleets get to, and we have an overall award, but the top 20 is celebrated, and also lots and lots of information sharing. So I'll give you guys the last word here. What, I don't know, what things are you like that we haven't talked about? Is there anything that you wanted to make sure and mention and talk about, something that has made your fleet better?
You want to answer, Marcia? Then I will. Just
I
like,
think equipment is big with us. We are constantly changing, making sure that we're keeping our equipment up to par for our drivers. Like we're getting how many new ones this year, Phil? How many new
90 new,
trucks?
90 new tractors, 150 new trailers. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. And to me, like that's where they're, like where they're spending a week, 2 weeks out on the road. That's their home away from home. So to always making sure that it's always staying running good and nice is important, especially to me when recruiting, because that's important to guys and gals. If the truck is running, that's how they're making their miles and bringing their trucks home or bringing their checks home to mama. So that's a big deal
And
to me.
also, and the thing that they are operating is something that's newer. And I know that a lot of fleets have had a hard time getting new equipment. So yeah, that is, and that's one of the things I think that drivers ask first, what are you running? What equipment,
Yes.
what equipment can I expect? So, Phil, last word.
I'm trying to think.
Oh, you were delaying. You were just you're buying some time.
He's going back to his first time when he started. He was quiet for just a little bit.
that's a no, I just think it's important to think about the total experience of any employee that works for you. And I guess because I have an HR background, and have had the honor to kind of step through many roles at our organization, but I have always, I firmly believe that no one is more important than anyone else in our organization, including me. And so, we all are interdependent on each other. So I always explain it as a three-legged stool. We need our drivers, which are the front line, and without our drivers, we don't have a company. Without our maintenance team, we can't keep our equipment maintained where it needs to be. And, yeah, we have, and swapping out new trucks and trailers. I mean, there's a lot of work in that. And we need our office team that supports our customers and our drivers and all of that. So I've always looked at it that it's important that we have programs that, especially in the competitive labor market that we're in today, that we have programs that earns the right to keep this person staying with us not just today, but for a lifetime. And in trucking, I'm not sure what that is, but we should be earning the right. Marsha, been with the organization, almost 24 years, me almost 19. We have a lot of people like that in our organization, including our drivers. And so I feel like, we're doing something right, but you can't take that for granted and you can't, rest on that. And so to me, that's why we're always pushing ourselves to think outside the box, to be better, to come up with a solution. And, I mean, any trucking company out there has definitely had their hands full with the fact that there's been less freight, which means driver satisfaction has not been as high because if you're not making as much, that's frustrating. And the miles just as general are down everywhere you look. And so, you kind of go back to your core, what's really important. And so I think, for us, we really try to live out our core values, in everything we do, in decisions we make, in how we treat our people, how we treat our vendors. Like we live it out. If not, we talk about that. And so, it's just part of the whole process that becomes kind of the sifters that we do as we create programs, how we treat people, as we look at situations, as we evaluate programs, as we evaluate effectiveness, as we even evaluate, whether someone stays or not. All of those things are important. And so we just want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Sometimes that's challenging in an industry that's imperfect.
Yeah.
What we do is so simple. We're just hauling freight from here to there. And yet it's all about people. And so that's why this program, I think, has been so helpful to ACT, and it's helped make us better because we've are examining ourselves and evaluating and figuring out what does that look like to be the next best, to make it the next year, but also to be a better organization. And so I say thanks to Best Fleets for what you guys do, for your heart for our industry, and for staying course, like staying true to what this is about, because for those that have been part of it, man, we're better because of it. So thank you for that.
Ah, you're very welcome. And
Absolutely.
thank you both very much for joining me on this podcast and for telling us about, the things that you're doing and the things that, the reason you're doing these things for drivers. And with that, I will say goodbye to everyone. Thank you, Phil Wilt and Marsha Long, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.